This hour, Parliament is expected to adopt a report today recommending that an ad hoc committee be established to investigate claims by KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi with a 90-day timeline to complete its work. Now, among the issues MPs want probed are allegations that embattled Police Minister Senzo Mchunu had a corrupt relationship with Brown Mkhwanazi and whether he misled Parliament. The committee has resolved to proceed with the inquiry despite ongoing investigations by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry and the Public Protector. For more on this, we're joined now by Qaanitah Hunter. She joins us in studio. Good afternoon. Qaanitah, how do we see this parliamentary process in light of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry and the Public Protector's investigations?
Well, the two committees of Parliament, the Portfolio Committee on Police and the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development, deliberated on this and said that Parliament cannot abdicate its responsibility for holding the executive accountable, and that there is precedent that Parliament stepped in despite there being other probes. Remember, in the past, Parliament was lambasted for giving up its responsibilities to other bodies, whether it was the Public Protector in the form of the Nhlanhla matter, for example, or the Zondo Commission in some way. And so what Parliament says now, that there are parts of these explosive allegations made by KZN Police Chief Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that warrants the attention of Parliament. Now, the draft report, this is a report that MPs would vote on, and once it's approved today, they will then start this ad hoc committee. In this report, they are recommending that the committee will have 90 days. Those who participate will be political parties given positions on a proportional basis. So the ANC will have the most representatives followed by the Democratic Alliance, etc. But they're focusing their probe from all of the allegations made by Mkhwanazi around the Minister Mchunu, particularly because he still remains a member of Parliament. And remember, some of these matters had come before Parliament previously, and the Minister had made some comments in relation to some of these accusations. For example, the nature of his relationship with Brown Mkhwanazi, the man who is said to have been the middleman between the Minister and one Vusimuzi Cat Nhlanhla. And so the probe will look at stuff like the unlawful decision by Minister Mchunu to disband the political killing task team. That's an important one. Whose decision was it to take those 121 case dockets away? Shadrack Sibiya's role in that regard, and whether or not he was acting on the instruction of the minister. The committee resolving, or the committee is resolving that this ad hoc committee should look into the moratorium by Mchunu for filling vacancies in crime intelligence, issues around whether he misled Parliament about his relationship with Brown Mkhwanazi, saying to Parliament he didn't even know the man earlier this year, and later saying, well, he was a comrade and they knew each other. And then going on to say, what was the nature of this triangle of a relationship, Michelle? Was it a corrupt relationship? And then how did Vusimuzi Cat Nhlanhla get that 360 million rand contract from SAPS? As well as political interference in procurement processes in SAPS. So you could see now that they are not extending the probe into what the President said the Judicial Commission of Inquiry would look into, which is systemic problems within SAPS and the criminal justice system. This is very specific. And by giving the committee 90 days, obviously there is scope to extend this period if needs be, but it has a very determined outcome, and it will obviously have a great consequence for Senzo Mchunu in terms of whether his name is cleared or whether or not these accusations stand.
And the Commission of Inquiry, Qaanitah, you'll give us some clarity on the timelines here, but it hasn't officially sat yet, right? Because we're still waiting for Justice Nhlanhla to finish his term of office in the Constitutional Court.
Well, before that, we need the Justice Minister to gazette the terms of reference. That's incredibly important. You'd remember, Michelle, that was the controversy around the Zondo Commission, was when President Jacob Zuma at the time announced terms of reference that were extremely wide. And the justice that's appointed has to basically be guided by what those terms of reference are. So We understand that, the legal minds in the top echelons of government are working to get those terms of reference. It takes a while to sort of put together that scope. The president simply says, this is my intention, this is what I want to be probed. And then it's up to the legal minds and the justice minister essentially to say, okay, here's the wording for it. Here's the terms of reference, but also the ambit in which this investigation will happen. Once that happens, then there is the administrative process of setting up an inquiry, finding premises, deciding what's made public and what's not made public. So that Judicial Commission of Inquiry only begins once there's a formal sort of sitting.
So there's no date. We don't have a particular date to say the first sitting is.
No, we don't. And we also don't know whether the president has it in mind that Justice Nhlanhla completes his term and then starts the inquiry. Obviously, it's important to have a justice that doesn't have anything else to do at the time, because it's very time-consuming, as was the case with Justice Zondo when he was Deputy Chief Justice and he had to probe the Zondo inquiry. It was very difficult to manage both responsibilities. And so his retirement is coming up now. So the question would be whether, the next 2 weeks or so he wraps up and then it starts to sit. So that process, and that's what the deliberation in Parliament is, that yes, you cannot abdicate your responsibility to the judiciary to say the judiciary is handling it. At the same time, while many MPs sought to assert the importance of Parliament to keep an eye on that process, they also cannot tell the judiciary what to do. So it's a very delicate process, because at the end of the day, this report does not go back to the president. It's not a president's report. It will go to the Speaker of the National Assembly, and then it becomes a Parliament's report. And so, as we've seen with previous judicial commissions of inquiry, then once they get the report, there's a predisposition to say, well, we're going to start our own probe based on this report. So it becomes an endless cycle of investigations. For this, I think, if I were Minister Mkhunu, I would be a little relieved by this, because if you have nothing to hide, Parliament ventilates your issues, particularly in relation to Mkhunu, while this commission deals with so many other bigger, larger things that may take years to reach a finality. And so, at the end of the day, we must not forget that while Mkhunu may be on leave or whatever it may be, however the president may phrase it in relation to his fate as a minister, he's a member of Parliament, and Parliament has to hold its member accountable. And so the other question comes about is, how much are they going to rely on Mkhwanazi as a witness in this, and then what do they do in relation to classified information?
Right.
Because this committee would naturally, do its work very publicly and have open sittings. So what happens to evidence that can't be out in the public domain, especially given the nature of this murky space called SAPS, crime intelligence, and related environments? And so I think it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But more importantly now, at the end of the day today, MPs will have to give this a nod, and then the business of this ad hoc committee will begin. And then it will be, I would assume, a very busy next 90 days.
Yeah, and it sounds like the ad hoc committee in Parliament and the work of the public protector might be quite far ahead. Well, I suppose that's the hope, isn't it? By the time the Judicial Commission of Inquiry actually gets underway.
Because it's also a very specific probe. The public protector's probe is in relation to the executive, the EMIA, right? And that's only in relation to whether the minister violated the Ethics Act. And so that is a very guided probe. The minister can be asked questions. It's an easy thing to go back and forth.
Shouldn't take long.
It shouldn't take long. Oh, no, by law, the public protector has to conclude her investigation within 30 days. You remember there's been numerous what you call EMIA investigations by the public protector. So it's a very well-guided process. And so that, so in an ideal world where there's no, delays and stalling, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, that only is with regards to Mkhunu and his particular role in very specific allegations relating to him as a minister. The extended accusations of collusion between criminal enterprise, the top brass of police, and politically connected individuals. That is something that is, one may call a quagmire, Michelle, because it could lead anywhere. And if you heard the president quite clearly, he extended the probe, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry, into the NPA and the intelligence services. So it's really about how corrupted and how messy is that entire space, which is an important probe to have. But does it sort of vindicate, or does it give us answers on the minister, for example? Not immediately. Does it vindicate or prove sort of wrong Shadrack Sibiya, for example? These are particular individuals whose names have been cited by Mkhwanazi. So several processes underway. And you know that there would also be several internal processes underway in SAPS, for example. What happens to Shadrack Sibiya, who's been suspended? Surely it cannot be that there's a wait until the end of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. So what I find interesting in terms of how Parliament has decided to approach this is to say, we're not going to be bystanders. We're not going to outsource our work to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. We're going to keep a close eye on it, but at the same time, we cannot duplicate the work that's been done. So here's a vacuum, or here's a little portion of a probe that needs to happen, and this is around the relationship that the minister is alleged to have had, whether or not he misled Parliament. And those processes, I would assume, Michelle, is easy to conclude, relative, but in the sense that if the minister is found to have been wanting in misleading Parliament, there's a process of an ethics committee that can follow. And so it will be interesting to see how deep these MPs take the matter, and what is the mood of the majority of the members of Parliament, because essentially in the past, the ANC that has the largest amount of seats in Parliament often dictate the tone of how these committees unfold. And so it will be interesting to see the appetite among ANC MPs themselves to either protect Mkhunu or to actually ventilate the accusations by Mkhwanazi and give it its full sort of time and effort.
It really sounds like what will happen is that we'll have some answers from the Public Protector. We'll then, in 90 days, have some answers by this ad hoc committee in Parliament, and then who knows when we will have answers from the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Just given, how do you answer the question of corruption within the SAPS? But Qaanitah Hunter, thanks for coming in, unpacking the latest on the Mkhwanazi saga and that bombshell briefing that he gave just some weeks ago.